So today I'm really excited to bring my friend Susan Winter to chat with us about this topic He's just not that into you. And really quickly, Susan is someone I admire. She has a substantial YouTube channel. She's one of those people that genuinely cares and wants to help people. So Susan, welcome to this interview or conversation.
Hi, Jonathan, thank you. And hello, all the Jonathanites out there. Welcome. Talk to us. Let us know what your questions are.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about why men won't commit, what to do about it. And while this is centered around men, because my audience are women seeking advice on men, this is really true for men and women alike. Would you agree?
Yeah, I work with all people, men, women, straight, gay, all ages. And
yeah.
What we're talking about is universal. Absolutely.
Well, I certainly suspect with, since I deal with more of a heterosexual marketplace, there are probably some unique differences for those people who are in gay and lesbian relationships, certainly those that are cultural differences from different countries. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I think human behavior, particularly in the area of childhood wounds and traumas and adult traumas, is not every person is unique to themselves, but it's still one of the common reasons why people struggle with commitment.
Exactly. Because of their original template. And that's why you're an advocate for people doing their own work, working on themselves. So we can work on ourselves a lot and be very knowledgeable. And women are really, really good at this. Women mull it over. We have to listen to his message 40 times, ask our friends what they thought, what did he mean? Why did they do it? We journal, we meditate, we go to the therapist. Guys traditionally are like, oh yeah, broke up. I don't know. She was crazy. Get a beer. It's done. And they tend to not process, but you're in California. So you're a different animal.
Yeah.
Conversation with the California men are like, oh, I felt like I was really not seen and I need to establish my boundaries. I'm like, oh, okay. All right.
You remind me of that episode on Friends where Rachel and Ross kissed and the girls are getting together to talk about it. And they're like, oh my God, this is such a big event. And do we need to get tissues? Let me get a glass of wine and all this. And then you pan to the guy's apartment and Ross says, so I kissed her. And he's like, then the guys say tongue. And you go, yeah, that's so the differences between men and women in the area of maybe processing, maybe women do that. They process the relationship maybe over and over again, different than men. How about actually healing their childhood wounds and their traumas over a relationship? Do you think women do a better job, or is it, equally poor for both genders?
I think when we hit a hot wire, we all freak out.
Yeah.
No matter how much we know and how much therapy we have. But I don't know that I've ever talked to you about this, but I have this inherent belief that if done beautifully, consciously, and intentionally, we could utilize the actual relationship that we are in to assist our healing. Because we are going to bump up next to somebody that we were attracted to, not for nothing, childhood, attachment stuff going on. And we're going to bump up next to them. And if we had the vocabulary to say, dude, that brought up something in me. I'm working through it. I know it did the exact opposite for you. Here we stand. Can we heal together? Wouldn't that be amazing? If you trigger me, I trigger you, but we're both aware of it, because that's the sacred relationship that we're talking about in a higher evolution of what I believe why we have relationships. We heal, and then we could have co-healing, right?
So I'm in full agreement that one of the challenges in relationship is the languaging to use. And it's interesting because communication is often, everyone says how important communication is. But really it's having the tools to communicate in a way that's to be seen, heard, and understood. And you made a really good point I want to piggyback on. And I've learned this in my new relationship, and it's not new. We're almost celebrating a year together now.
Wow.
I did a lot of personal development, self-help, spiritual work before I met her. I recognized my patterns of my patterns of my limiting beliefs, my negative self-talk. That I worked on a lot before I met her. I worked on my attachment style. Now that I'm in this relationship, I'm actually still butting up against the residue of all the work I did. And this particular relationship, we don't trigger each other to run away, then we actually lean in to work on those little, it's like they're healing the residue that's left over from our past. Am I making sense?
It is not only, it's brilliantly stated, the word residue. Yeah. I had a friend once who said, we talked about issues and triggers, and he said, because we were in this adult children of alcoholics, rehab together, trying to heal from the experience with our parents. And he said, Susan, I think the best we can do is to get it to go from an alarm, a fire alarm, down to a doorbell ringing.
Interesting.
Isn't that cool? And I said, yeah. So
you talked about the languaging. I oftentimes recommend the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg.
Okay.
I wish the title was called Compassionate Communication, because what I observed within couples, and we're talking about why people don't commit. I think we have a lot of human beings out there that are rather dysfunctional in relationship. They enter in with another person to get companionship, connection, and sex, or maybe occasional companionship, occasional connection, occasional sex. But there's not a real intentionality to build a relationship with someone. Do you see the same thing in your practice?
Well, from a female perspective, hearing my female clients, they struggle to get a relationship that is agreeable. And so we talked about, and it's a stereotype, so forgive me, but generally speaking, that men are less able to articulate their feelings, or have been taught not to. Piggybacked on, that's this generation, like 40 and above.
Yeah.
Under that, you've got people that can't communicate, can't even look at each other eye to eye. Now you've got a double impactful thing, and now nobody's really talking about it. So there seems to be a general attrition as far as the quality of communication. And you are correct. The way in which the political, it's like diplomatic, tactful, elegant expression of what we are feeling. It's so difficult. You've got to have restraint. You've got to think it through. You've got to know exactly what are the things that I need to say. Because now here from a female, you know this, Jonathan, we go into this bubble of 500 words and you're like, what is the point? What did she say?
Yeah, exactly.
Like we talk about Margot's dress, and then you don't know what's the point, and we do that. I know. So communication skills, it sounds so boring, but I know. So I did my first ever group class, and the last 5 weeks was communication. I realized.
By the way, I'm going to put my headset on because people are saying they can't hear me so well. So bear with me.
I can hear you here. I'm sorry that they can't. But I think we underestimate. It's not a sexy title, non-combative communication, or communication, compassionate communication for relationships is better. But the necessity to, once we know what we're feeling, be able to express what we're feeling in a way that doesn't trigger our partner into defensiveness, running away, deflection, shutting down. That's an art in itself.
So where do people go to get help for that? Like, how do you help? I mean, because I'm not an expert at communication. And what I mean to say is, well, I can model it and certainly when I bring Marie on to our video, she models it because she's really great at speaking her truth, in a kind, loving way.
Wow.
But that's not something that, we're not taught that.
No, we're not taught to be diplomatic and tactful. I mean, people have two responses. You either repress it, doubt that you're feeling it, not sure, and take the cues from your partner, or you feel something, feel fearful, which translates into anger, and you get reactive and blame them. So those tend to be the two. I mean, look at television. What do we see all day long? How many examples do you see of somebody having great communication on TV?
Yeah.
I mean, just in movies. The whole premise of romantic movies is they love each other and they don't say it till the end. You're like, what? Why did I watch this for 2 hours?
But at the same time, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. But they're scripted in the movies. That's all. Someone is writing their dialogue for us. We don't have anyone writing our dialogue for us.
I do. I have to be honest with you. I technically write the things for my clients to say, and they come back and go, oh my God. But you can do it too. And we have.
Oh, no, I do that for clients.
We have the luxury of observation, not being emotionally in it. When you're in the middle of it, to try to articulate those things is a whole nother ballgame, right? To know how to say it. I had to practice a dialogue with a lady whose dog aggressed against Nika, not because she was a bad dog. Their cords got caught together and Nika couldn't get away. I couldn't be a good dog mom. Anyway, I had to practice, how can I say this to her to not piss off a neighbor, keep good relationships, and teach her that you need to train your dog. So I had to practice in my head, and my heart was pounding, and then I called her. But you would do the same with a partner. You're like, okay, what do I need to say? How can I say it? How can I say it so they can hear it? That's the art in the translation. So my partner can, knowing their disposition, how can I weave that conversation in so they hear me without getting reactive and want to help me work on this so we can get to conflict resolution?
Okay, so let me ask you, since, we titled this, why men over 40 won't commit and what to do about it, is part of the issue you see for men not committing centered around communication, or is there something deeper than that that's actually happening for the over 40 crowd?
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
Honestly, they want easy. They want effortless. Men crave that. I don't know who told them that. Maybe porn taught them that. Their mom taught them that because they were wonderful. I do not know. But most men want a buddy who does their activities, looks sexy, has great sex with them, and then will shut up, maybe cook. I mean, really, if you really, really ask them what they really want. And I think the dialogue about, oh, honey, I'm feeling this or I'm doing that is just like, oh, God, the penance I have to pay to be in this. Right. And I think they think it's hard. Oh, it's so hard to be with a woman. I have to keep her happy. It's so hard. I had to, show up at that cocktail party and I had to smile. And, oh, it's so hard. I had to listen to her when she was upset. And, oh, it's so hard because I don't think we as humans ever had a class in grade school that taught us how to communicate, negotiate, get what we want, and respect the other person's opinion. I don't think we did that.
You brought up something I want to touch upon, because you're right. We're not taught how to be in relationship, and all we have is the modeling we saw growing up with our parents. And oftentimes, I mean, it's funny with my parents, all I remember as a child was all the bad things that happened in their marriage. I don't really remember all the loving that happened. I mean, I didn't pay attention till I was an adult. But to the extent that men want it easy, well, I would agree with that. I would say, yes, I want it easy.
We all want an easy relationship.
Yeah, most everyone.
That's the ideal, right?
I think over 40, though, I think the real issue for the older demographic is when we're in our 20s and 30s, many of us are on the hunt for a wife. In other words, the mother of our children. And for whatever reason, that marriage dissipates, ends. And by the way, 70% of divorces are initiated by women. So it's the women ending it because they weren't getting their needs met. Here's what happens, what I think. Men over 40, if they're not on the hunt for a wife, they want companionship, they want connection, they want sex, but they're not really looking at it from the perspective of a teammate. I think that's the real issue with men, is both they want it easy for sure, but there's not a recognition of the value of having a teammate in your life. You know, am I making sense with the teammate?
Jonathan, this is why every woman loves you that watches. We're like, can we please clone you? Can we clone? I mean, they do tons of stuff with AI. They're doing genetic research. I think forget the sheep. We need you. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you.
But we started with Polly. Now we got you.
Yeah.
But another thing, and okay, I have to say this because I absolutely love men. I might be one of the few females that truly loves, and I think I understand men. There is another thing. Okay. Divorced men. Okay, bear with me, but anyone dating knows what I'm talking about. I believe when a man makes a commitment in his first marriage, he walks down that aisle and he mentally goes, okay, this is it. I'm closing the door to everything else, and creates a family and children and a wife. When that dream is shattered, for reasons that he didn't understand why they got there. And that dream dies. A part of him wanting to ever love again dies. I have been so mortally wounded and shut down, like, that hurt me. I'm not going there again. And I see a lot of these gals dating men that have had divorces that it's like the last tear. They keep trying to knock on that door, like the last bit of, I know he loves me and he won't give it up. Because he's so terrified, because he didn't get the help he needed. So when they lose the dream for a man, it is so shattering. He's lost his purpose, protect, provide my family. He feels, and then he's in a little crummy apartment someplace, and his wife's got the big house, and then he gets resentment. So then he finds his way to these men's groups that teach him to treat us like a rubber doll and throw us away. And then he's fodder for those groups that inherently hate women because they're unhealed.
So, well, I want to, as a man, I want to say that I agree to the extent that when it's funny, in the movie Bronx Tale, one of the characters, who's kind of a mob person, says we men have 3 loves in our lives. Okay. And I to some degree kind of can relate to that, because when I got married, that was technically my first love. And it was really, I was supposed to marry a woman to be the mother of my children. So I had that programming running in my head. And when that relationship ended, I was out playing, I was having a good time. I was a serial dater and such like that, because there was this new freedom out there. And then I met another woman who I really cared for, but I was really still rather emotionally messed up. And that's when I began doing personal development, self-help, and spiritual work. So now that I've met this partner, I'm now in a better position to love, because I'm not sure, I might have had attachment in the past, but I do agree, when a man loves someone deeply and it doesn't work out, I believe they become very gun shy for a period of time. And if they haven't healed, that could last decades.
I agree. You made the active choice as a man to heal yourself for yourself. But more times than not, we're here intentionally dating, talking about consciously healing ourselves. Jonathan, you understand the segment of the population that's like, it's too much, I just want to improve my golf game. I mean, this is what I mean when I say it's hard.
So do you think it's hopeless for women? I mean, do you think it's going to be impossible? Because I do believe good men exist.
I know good men exist. I work with them. As a matter of fact, I work with so many men that at one point, Lauren and I wondered if I should specialize in it. But I'm going to tell you, and every female in your channel needs to hear this. When a man loves a woman, he will pay anything to get it right. He will do anything to get her back. He will walk across glass on fire to get that woman that he loves. And I know that to be true. And it's heartbreaking when I hear the stories and I know she's not in it for the right reasons, or that it's not going to happen.
Okay, so let's differentiate between the men who are, they're in relationship with you, but the difference between the guy who's just in it for themselves versus the guys that will walk through glass. There is a difference between the two. What do you see the difference? Like, how can a woman recognize the guy who's going to walk over glass versus the guy that just wants their own needs met?
Easy. It's easy.
Okay.
They are a man of character and true integrity that is woven throughout every aspect of their personality.
Okay.
There is an inherent, if and when I go online, I go on for like a day, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. But the number one sentence I say is, I am looking for a true gentleman of character and substance. And I figure a real guy who knows who he is, next. But a guy that goes, because I think so if I had to say one thing to look for, to put out everything, one thing, I would say look for a fine human being. The person who couldn't be cruel if they wanted to. Like they might have to make a business move, but it's uncomfortable for them to fire people. It's not they're not the person to go cut off a car and gloat over it. There's somebody who, you know what I mean? They're an inherently, I don't want to say moral, like there are moral values, but they have a code that they live by. That kind of person, if it is woven through their whole personality, and they're not just cherry picking, like it serves me well because I look good in front of my community to say I do this, right? I give to children or I go to church, but it's really in them how they live. At least you've got some good material to work with. Even if they haven't consciously gone to therapy or anything about it, they would be more incentivized to come back to harmony, to go through conflict to get to resolution.
I had a client who had a blind date with a man, and the one thing she knew about him ahead of time was, it got fixed up, obviously, was that he gave a kidney to a total stranger.
Oh my goodness.
And so, like, to me, somebody who does that, and I mean, that's something.
That's over the top, but yes.
That's over the top. But you know what? So here she is. She was a highly successful woman, made substantial amount of money, and he was struggling financially. And she talked to me about it and said, Jonathan, I'm struggling with the fact that he's not at my level. And I said, but he's a man of character.
Yeah.
So she gave him a chance. And guess what? Now he basically runs her life. She gets to run the business and he takes care of everything else. And he's not a beta male. He's a contractor. He's on a baseball league. He is very loving and devoted to her. But she had to overcome that. He wasn't at my level. And what I said was his character mattered more than your level.
Jonathan, I love that. And can we talk about this for a second?
Sure.
Many of your females are going to have far greater resources than the men they are meeting. That can create disharmony in the man, and he can feel emasculated by that. However, we have this huge social mantle of like, she won, she picked well, she got top brass ring, and it is such bullshit. I mean, really, you are looking for the person who will be there when you have the mastectomy, not the guy who's going to run away. You're looking for the person who's going to pick. You know how I choose today? Not the hot young one that's chasing me around the gym. I think, who's going to be there after my colonoscopy, sitting in that I'm a senior citizen who's going to be waiting for me and by my side. Right.
By the way, I took Marie to get a colonoscopy and I was there afterwards. I always say, will that person be there for you to wipe the vomit off your face when you're going through chemotherapy? To me, that's what matters more than, but we are, we talked about something before we began. We were talking about the aging, how, the aging of America and how there's a judgment around aging and looking good and such, and that women, we talked about are they at a disadvantage when they hit 50 or 60 years old? And you and I talked about that for a moment. Do you want to expand upon what we talked about?
Well, I think most women who've been online feel unseen. Because if they list most women feel compelled to cheat and say that they are the age that they look, only that they have to reveal to a guy who could then double slap them because he did like the way they look, but now he doesn't like the truth about their age. And then, you lied to me once. So we're up against a jam because youth and beauty have been the hallmark of desirability. And at one point in time, unfortunately, our virginity. I think we passed that in 21st century. But
yeah, most definitely.
right, youth and beauty were the selling points. Now we have financial resources, and we can have a seat at the table, and we can be much more multidimensional. However, the world has not evolved to the point that they've released us from this insane thing about our age in the equation of our worth. And we feel it and we fight against it. We may know I'm a hell of a person, I'm a great woman worth dating, but there is the same social mantle, that weight of the messaging that was given to your lady friend who finally overrode it. We got to be brave.
So, by the way, for the record, my sweetheart, there's a picture of her and I. She's a year older than me, so I didn't go 10, 20, 30 years younger. So I want you to know, I went to a wedding 3 weeks ago. The woman was 63, and he's actually 2 months younger than her. So he's with an older woman. In fact, number of my friends, my circle of friends, the women are actually somewhere between 1 year and less than 1 year older. And these are all people that got married within the last 10 years. So while there is, we talked about, there's the fear, there's the actual judgment that does occur. There's no doubt that occurs.
Right.
But I think also women who overcome the fear of that judgment do better in the dating realm than those that are stuck with a story that I won't be chosen because I'm too old. Do you agree with that?
You nailed it. Absolutely. That's exactly the point, because it's the energy we carry with us. There will be guys that will swipe and swipe because they're still of the thinking that I'm not looking for totality. I'm looking for externals. And you want them to swipe past you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's not, if you're a woman of substance and you want to bring the whole of you to the party, not just this and jump into bed, then you need them to feel that, for you to feel incentivized to even connect with them. So good. It's a good filtering process.
Okay, filtering. And I remember you did a video not too long ago talking about filtering. Hey, so really quickly, I noticed some questions come in. Do you mind if we scroll through, or I'm going to go through some of the questions?
I think we could.
Let's see. Bear with me 1 second. Anna, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Artist wrote, I have an experience where the guys past relationship willingly pursue women who are in relationships. I wonder if that gives them trouble to have healthy and commitment to relationships. I think what she's saying is women who are still pursuing men while they're in other relationships. Have you seen that in your practice?
No, normally when they're in one and they're happy with it, they're not hunting.
Yeah.
No,
but other women hunting for the guy who's in a relationship.
Yes, of course. Because we know a man's status elevates when another woman validates he's worth partnering with.
So
kind of like tried and true, like, have a guy with a child in the park. Every woman wants that guy. Like, children or a dog.
The dog, yeah. So it's interesting, and I would like your take on the following, because Marie and I were talking about this. In a recent video she and I shot, there were some women who wrote some really cruel things about Marie in the video, and or in the comment section. I was really disappointed with that. And she brushes it off. She has no issues. I'm the protector. I'm like, I want to protect you from this. And she goes, look, Jonathan, women can be catty, and I don't see my male friends doing the same thing I've noticed with women. And I'm not trying to point out a flaw, but do you think women can be catty to other women?
We have been taught that okay, let's go back. This is historic, Jonathan, and it was a reality of survival. You had men who were the only source of attaining a life. So you wouldn't be put in a nunnery, a seamstress, or a prostitute. I mean, you had to marry. Women got their first credit card when I was watching Walter Cronkite in my television. The first woman in history.
By the way, I was only laughing because I remember Walter Cronkite, not because of what you're saying. So
okay. So a woman didn't have a credit card in her own name until the 1960s.
Yeah.
You couldn't have property in the 1900s. I mean, so we competed with each other for survival innately.
Yeah.
It was like part of the deal. But now we are the breadwinners and we are outpacing men in colleges. But again, we haven't caught up with, we had centuries of this nonsense. It's hard to shake it loose, but I think the younger generations are much more collaborative, and I think that will come about. But Marie, your woman, hits every mark of, how do I say this? Irritating another woman. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Beautiful, accomplished.
Yeah.
No agenda, wants you because she wants you. She's a very, very, very successful woman who chose the man of her dreams. Yeah. And so remember, we do not have a template. When was the last time you watched a movie or a television show with a woman who was gorgeous physically, intelligent, immensely intelligent, beautiful, and generous, warm, and successful? We have two dimensions that we see repeatedly. The successful, cold-hearted bitch.
Yeah.
Always yearning for love but can't get it because she's cold. And the warm, sweet, beautiful thing that's a bit of an idiot in love. We don't even help.
I was thinking of Devil Wears Prada when you said that. But
it's the underachiever with a good heart, but she can't get it right. Or the cold one that's, look at what, and every time we have anything like this, we keep reinforcing that. It's going to take even more generations for women to get over this thing and realize that we are just looking for one man who sees us. That's it.
And in all fairness to women as well, because I'm in full agreement to what you just shared, men play a role in this too, because there's a lot of jackass men out there. There are a lot of men who are players. Oh yeah, believe me. Well, you and I like to talk about the probably the small percentage of population that's done healing, the small percentage of the population that works on communicating better. But at the same time, men can be, like I said, men can be jackasses too. And I'm always like, my channel is I'm the big brother. I'm trying to protect women from the bad guys.
I know. Men can. And by the way, for your very successful women who are of a certain age who feel rejected by certain men, there's another part of it that's actually coming from their wound. They don't feel like they have anything to offer you. This we never consider. And in a way, I understand men enough to know that when they look at a successful, beautiful woman, not only are they intimidated, not because they dislike you, they're trying to think, well, what would she want with me? I can't do anything for her. So men are in a bit of a quandary nowadays. And that's where our success oftentimes looks like a double-edged sword, because we did it for ourselves. We want to achieve something. And we can't coddle them if they're not feeling good enough. We can't be less so they will feel like more. But at the same time, we have to understand that they're desperately trying to find, how can I serve her? How can I be her king? How can I be something in her life if she's got every box checked off?
I will say I am guilty of what you just talked about. I have in the past, and I was in a relationship where I put a woman up on a pedestal and I thought I was less than because she had more status, she had more prestige. She had been this is before my YouTube channel took off and I was in the beginning of my business. And she was on television and she didn't intimidate me. I don't like the frame that a man is intimidated by a woman. I felt less than on my own. She didn't do anything other than I projected that she was better than me. And I know even in dating, I've done the same thing. I thought, oh, she lives in a nicer home. She drives a nicer car. She has nicer clothes. I projected that she isn't going to want me because she might have more status than me. Now, I've learned since then that that's just a story made up in my head talking about the men you talked about. But I'm guilty of that. I can relate.
But Jonathan, we both, male and female, carry this heavy burden. It's a double locking system. I've written about this. Women are trapped in that. I must get the highest rung to do well. Oh, she did well. And like guys are like, I have to be the biggest guy so that I can take care of her. You know, it's changing now. And it's hard for us to let go of. Sometimes in order to be with our true love, we got to walk against society, and we've got to have certain people go, oh, really? He does that? Or, you know, well, he doesn't make, what kind of car does he drive? He works at, you got to deal with that stuff.
Do you ever watch, Netflix has a show called Indian Matchmaker.
I watched the first series of it. Yeah.
Okay, so the new season came out just a couple days ago, and I love this. This is a woman. The matchmaker is like, look, if you get 60% of what you want, you should be happy. And looks is the least important thing on the list. But you know, like she's like, look, you know, you're looking for character and all these things. So when we can get out of our own way, when we get out of our head and into our heart, that's actually the space to really connect with someone. By the way, we have another question that came in. So Vicky writes, question. By the way, folks, if you have a question, write the word question and post the question thereafter. What is the best way to heal from abandonment wound at age 12? A boy I like just rejected me one day. I'm now 48, and I seem to only attract guys who are emotionally unavailable. What are your thoughts, Susan?
Sweetie, you were 12. Boys didn't want relationships then. They wanted you to play with a softball. He didn't know what to do with you. It doesn't, it has, I would, if you haven't gone to therapy, definitely go.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody you trust. But the way you framed that, see, children, I did this too. I've got my things too. Yeah. So this is not a reprimand. I want to be really clear. I still got stuff in me that I catch. Children have concrete vision. We see things in black and white. And at 12, you're kind of on the cusp, but you could have seen that as the truth. This is the truth. And in your child mind, where you're not fully developed yet, you realize, you thought, you made a conclusion that this is the truth about me. Yeah. So we have to, as Jonathan did with his life after his marriage, we have to go through these old tapes and read them and say, is that true today? And again, a kid 12, he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't reject you. Yeah. He wanted to go play softball with his buddies.
Yeah. So I believe also, I'm going to piggyback on what you said. I believe every bit of rejection we experience in our life is an opportunity to love ourselves. Like that's really, like, I think it's almost God's little trick going, okay, I'm going to send you someone who's going to reject you and abandon you because I want you to love yourself. I'm going to send you another emotionally unavailable man, so you're going to love yourself. I'm going to send you that emotionally constipated man so you can love yourself. Okay. And when you love yourself just enough, it's not this whole thing, you have to love yourself to love another. No, when you begin loving yourself, guess what God will do? He'll start sending you guys that are a little bit nicer, more character. Now you got to get out of your own way, not to reject the guy that, might be balding or whatever.
Now you're challenged. The very difficult thing is somebody who actually is good to you. That's going to be foreign.
Yeah. And then you're going to reject that because you're used to the emotionally constipated man.
No, so, what do I do? He's so loving and kind.
All right, we have another question from Nicole. Let's hear what she has to say. Question, for those of us that have dysfunctional family origins, my father was married 4 times and my mother's been married 5 times. How does someone with a toxic family of origin not scare a guy away? Now, I am assuming, Susan, what she's saying is if I share the story of my parents, that's going to scare a guy away. But I don't really think that's an issue. I think there's something else.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. It takes a lot of intuition to see through, 3 or 4 sentences. First of all, the story of your family is not the story of you. In my understanding, although that's been your template, when children are given that heavy a dose, it is almost, to piggyback on what you said earlier, a spiritual message like, I don't want that. I want better. My desire is better. I'm going to make that happen because I certainly know I don't want that. So you've probably never been more incentivized than to have a healthy relationship because you see the price when it's not. So I don't see that as being against you. I see that as being the thing that propels you forward. This is how we get our life purpose, our life goals. Every desire is born of a challenge. and that's what all these challenges are for. Hard in the middle of it. Oh yeah, love the pain. Oh, thank you, life, for your challenge. But it is true.
So, it's interesting. Most everyone in my channel knows I lost a child. And I'm bringing this up because some people will say that's the most horrific thing that's happened in your life. And I can tell you that I've had other things that feel equally as challenging. And my point in bringing this up is we all have challenges that happened in our lives, whether it's in this particular case, having parents who've been married 4 or 5 times, each one of them, somebody has had a different issue. We've all have challenges. The real question, piggybacking on what you said, is have we overcome the emotional trauma that we experience, and are we going to excel? Because I made a promise to my son when he passed away. I knew he wanted me to live my most, authentic, happy life. So in his honor, I'm not letting that take me down. And my advice for anyone, any challenge you have was an opportunity for you to grow as a person going forward. That's just my take on that. We got another question. This is a good one. Bear with me a second, Susan.
I'm so overwhelmed by your technical command.
Okay. Artist Joyce says, question, I guess how much can you heal together before it becomes too much to handle, or is it unrealistic to give up easily? Ooh, that's an interesting question. Well, I'm going to jump in on this one. I believe that Marie and I both did quite a bit of work before we met. I did the Hoffman process. I did Insight Institute. She did LifeSpring when she was 19. She did she did something called Naked Divorce to heal after her divorce. I did other things. Now that we're together, it's really, I remember I said earlier, the residue.
Yeah.
I think we're learning to love differently than we were taught as, what we observed as children. And I think the residue comes up, but we lean to love because we made a commitment to each other. I think if you had a ton of healing to do with someone, that might be overwhelming. It might be exhausting. And I would agree. And maybe that's meant to take you to the next level. Not for this relationship. That's just my 2 cents on that one.
It could be that the person that sent this message feels as though they are constantly working.
Oh, got it.
At trying to get to everything you said, plus another, because we're guessing here. We got a couple sentences, right? So we
exactly
consultation. So another thing is, are you spending all your time trying to just get to calm or functional? And if every bit of your day is them going through their issues and you going through your issues, that gets very heavy.
Yeah.
Very heavy. The point of it is, as Jonathan said, you go from this big ball of this to it should be diminishing, and you should be seeing progress in your relationship, meaning more peaceful, happy, agreeable moments and less crises. This is the sign of a relationship that's on the right track.
So we have another question I want to take, but I have an observation. I want your opinion on this. So I see relationships tend to take off with all this, oh my God, it's like romance and lovey-dovey and it's all perfect. Yeah. And then once you're in, all of a sudden the real issues start coming up about issues about finances, issues about snoring, issues about, like if you're living together, how they do daily life together. So it's kind of fascinating. It's not we go from this bad to good. Oftentimes it starts good and it starts becoming bad. And this is how I would like everyone to address this. Don't sweep anything under the rug. The most important time to address things is right when it happens, so you can overcome them. And the more little barriers you overcome in your relationship, the stronger the relationship becomes.
I love that. If you can identify it, clearly figure out what the point is that you want to say to your partner, do it diplomatically and succinctly in a way that is a neutral manner. Yeah. If you can work on how you communicate, and then let them know they're not bad or wrong, it's just something that happened, and can you find another way to do it? I think that's brilliant. We oftentimes try to ignore it. for the relationship, like, okay, I'm, I'm not going to, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. It's early days. I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers.
Yeah. Okay. We got another question from Charlene. Thank you for that one, Susan. So question, can you give us 3 small things we can do to attract a good man, or I'm going to say good man or woman. So I'd like to hear your 3 things and I'll give you 3 things.
Well, one I did. Well, first of all, for you, really know exactly what you want to experience in this relationship and do the mental work of imagining how you want to feel in the relationship.
Yeah.
I think that'll guide you more purposefully to choose to be aware of somebody you might not have had on your radar that could be the one. So that's going to help you, I think, in your selection process.
Yeah.
2, find an inherently good person. And 3, find somebody who wants what you want and they want it with you.
So I'm going to piggyback on yours because I think first, let's be real. One of the challenges, you have to be seen by a single eligible person to get a date. You have to be physically seen. In other words, it's not if you're
somehow. You have to be.
Well, they have to see you. So somehow you either have to put yourself out there, and more importantly, put the best representation of yourself out there. If you were trying to get a job with the company of your dreams, would you show up in pajamas and with a resume that was all crinkled up, or would you get dressed up and put the best foot forward? So I think first is put yourself out there, and the piggyback on that, put the best version of yourself out there to be seen. And I'm not saying going overboard. I don't mean small mini skirts or things like that. Okay. Number 2, and you said this, and I have to piggyback on this. I think women are rather clueless on what they want. They all come to me in coaching, Jonathan, I know what I want. I know what I want. I know what I want. And then they go through this proprietary coaching program I created. And they say every single time, oh my God, I now realize I now know what I want. It's always for a lot of women, and remember, men want it easy. We get that piece, but women have a fantasy of what it's supposed to look like, and they created a box, and that box, they never end up with that box. They end up with someone different. So, and then the third piece, I always talk about vetting. You got to ask the right questions to determine, is he a player? Is he a serial monogamous? Is he a serial dater? Is he a nice guy, a bad boy, or the person looking for you? You got to ask good questions, which you talked about. So anyways, those are my 3 things. So Charlene, thank you for that question.
Charlene, you're good to go
now. Okay. So Roller Girl said, Jonathan, I love that Jonathan said rejection so we can love ourselves more. Exactly. Patricia writes, question. Does it make you a bad person does it make you a bad person for a good relationship if you've been married multiple times? You said something earlier, like it used to be a woman's value was a virgin. I'm like, well, that ship has long, sailed us by, for them. In this generation. So I think most people are used to multiple relationships or multiple marriages.
I mean, are we talking 15 or 20, or are we talking?
No, I'm going to assume if someone's been married 4 times, that could be a red flag. I think if someone's been married twice, I think
Taylor did it 7 times.
Yeah. Right? So, and Larry King, I think, was married 8 times. So,
he had to keep getting younger women. They kept dying.
Yeah, and Leonardo DiCaprio, the minute he takes them to an event, she's already too old. But I think the judgment we see probably does more damage than the judgment someone else sees.
Yeah, at that point, I think I'd say, why am I marrying? At a certain age, we really don't need to do that. It is a litigious issue for children, stepkids. I mean, you're just walking into a mess. Unless it is deeply against your religion not to marry, I would suggest, as somebody over 40 who's had your kids, why don't you think about creating a partnership, possibly dating for a while, being exclusive, living together.
Yeah.
And seeing if marriage is the right choice. You might be somebody inherently that, though you think you want forever, you really don't. And this is a big realization for people. You may
Yeah.
just what is great for this time segment, and when you're done, you're done. And I know that that defies I want one person for the rest of my life, but there are a number of people that are realizing this about themselves. And
Yeah.
so to marry is that's a lot of expense and time and cumbersome getting out. It's a lot to get into.
So, in my particular case, we live together, and I jokingly say I'm the one who wants to get married and she doesn't. And I say that tongue in cheek. I think what we have is an agreed partnership. We
Love it.
operate in our relationship like a partnership,
Mhm.
and maybe someday that might turn into marriage, that may not. Okay. But what's most important is each day we invest in this partnership. Now, if for whatever reason one person wants out, or maybe someone wants out for an altruistic reason. One of us gets sick and the other person says, I want to leave, so I don't want to be a burden on you, which, you don't. By the way, I think if either one of us said that, we might say that, but I think we'd still want to stay.
Yeah.
The point is, marriage is not the end all be all per se. I think what matters most is, do we treat each other like teammates with one another? Do we treat each other like partners with one another? Do we co-create together? Is this a mutual effort in the relationship? That to me has way more weight than whether or not you have the paper. But I do believe living together, I'm going to say something about living together. You really get to know another human being when you live together with them, and by the way, a lot of people, they could have been dating for 5 years, live together, and it could blow up in a matter of weeks, or months, because that's when you really get to know someone, is when you live together.
So some 25 years ago, I was talking about evolutionary designs and how to create a relationship that's right for your disposition. And so I think we are at the point in time where we are, I think it would serve us better if we looked at the agreements that we create between ourselves,
Yes.
Jonathan has done, and you look at your life and you operate by an agreement for how you want to live together, knowing who you are and what dynamic gives us the greatest quality of relationship and satisfaction.
Yes.
There are people I know who've been married, and I'm in the Southwest now, and so if you have somebody that lives in Scottsdale, their partner may be in Tucson, which is an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
Sometimes the guys will say, honey, I think it's time we live together. And the lady will go, baby, I love you, but you know what I love about this? I come to you every weekend. You come to me. I've got the whole week to work. And when you and I are together on the weekend, everything stops and I can totally pay attention to you and I can handle my business and my life.
Yeah.
I don't want it the other way, but that is an individual decision. So we have this incredible moment in time where we have the freedom to understand what works for us, present
Yes.
to our partner, and does this work for you? And always, as you said, be open to amending that for a greater evolution of where we want to go. Hey, this is really good. We love living. We can get married. Yeah, I'm all up for it. No, I like it the way it is. What do you think?
So you've just talked about something called living together apart. There was a book I read on that, and I'm a big proponent of. But what I like about that, I said, but I want to retract the but. What I like about it is its agreements. Again, whether you get married, whether you live together, whether you live together apart, or even if you're in a relationship where I think ultimately it's about being conscious and intentional about, why are we doing this?
Exactly.
And to some degree, how long do we want to do this? Do we want to do this till the day we die? And no matter what it looks like, living together apart, living together in marriage, at least choose someone who wants to partner with you. That to me, and wants to be a teammate. Otherwise, the other alternative is casual relationships and friends with benefits. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when one person wants more, and then it's an imbalance in the agreement oftentimes.
And if I'm a huge proponent of baking growth and flexibility into the relationship from the beginning. The reason that so many marriages have failed as of the 1970s and onward is that it was rigid structure with rules and roles, and it did not allow for an expanding consciousness. So it had to be broken. Wouldn't it be better if we did one of those hefty, 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 whippy, whippy, whippy? Like you fill your trash bag and you're like, it's not going to take any more. And it goes more if we built a relationship that was able to flex and give as we grow, then we have a dynamic, alive vehicle that that cradles our love as we grow as individuals together. And that requires communication, consciousness, union. And it's like, where do we go from here, honey? Because growing relationships that stay alive and flourish are always open to new conversations about what do you think about this? How do you want to try that? This is great. I love this. Right? That's how they grow.
Exactly. Well, sweetheart, if you don't mind that term of endearment.
Johnny, it is fabulous.
Okay, thank you. You know, I made a promise to you because you had to run at noon. So I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate you joining for this discussion. I'd like to have you on. Maybe in a few months we do it again. By the way, folks, in the link below is a link to Susan's channel. I highly recommend following her. She's got a great channel. Her titles are more specific to what's going on, which is very niche, and there's a lot of value in that. So check out the link. You know what I'm talking about, sweetheart.
I feel like I lived in the 1800s and wrote treatise on mechanical technology from the perspective of the ant. I mean, it's not very sexy SEO. I don't have that down.
So, however, with that said, I always tune in because you have great content. I want everyone to start following Susan on her channel. She does great. I'm so grateful that you came in to talk about this conversation. And let's do this again. Is that okay with you?
Jonathan, I adore you. You know, it is so refreshing, and I know your audience will back me up in that, to have a solid, credible voice of wisdom and guidance in these very confusing times where there are thousands of voices and much of it's regurgitated, not thought, just repeated. And yours is very novel, very current, very new, and always growing as well, and thoughtful and heart-based. So please know that I appreciate you immensely and really count myself lucky to have you in my corner and as a colleague.
Well, thank you. Well, can I reach into the camera and give you a big, gigantic hug? All right, everyone, we're going to say goodbye. You stay on. Have a great day. I want to thank you all for being on. So I'm going to wrap up this broadcast.